I don't think anybody was expecting a hotfix yesterday. Certainly I was not. I took the time to look at it on the stream. Caught me off guard. I was in the middle of the stream. People were like, have you seen the new hotfix? And I was like, what are you talking about? And we took a look at it on the stream, and we broke down my overall thoughts, my first reactions. But I really wanted to go maybe a little bit more in depth, maybe kind of clean up my thoughts about what I think about this patch. Because overall, I really don't think this patch is great. But I do want to kind of clarify why I think some of these patch changes were made, and then honestly give some of my critiques of how the system has gone on. First thing I want to point out here is that 66 still doesn't have patch notes. This is something that we were told that we'd be given for the future update of 66 for rank mode, and we don't have it. In fact, I'll have to link a Reddit thread I found where they did a little bit of investigation. I think they were able to basically figure out what was changed without actually being documented. But honestly, this is kind of a really bad surprise considering the development team that has done such a good job with communication recently. To not have patch notes for a really, really big phenomena right now, like 66 is a big deal right now. It's pretty fun. I've been able to play a little bit myself, not enough to really have a firm opinion. It's basically just 66 with perks without roll lock, but there's like a max 2. And anyway, it's pretty fun. You should get out there and try it. It's pretty cool. But there's still no patch notes, so there's no real way to analyze some of the things that I think they need to do better from last 66 patch. One thing that they did really well is that the ult charge is a lot more normalized now, so you can actually build ults now, which is, I think, amazing. But beyond that, like a lot of it's mystery, and a lot of it the community has had to have done, which is just really crappy. So that sucks. The other thing here... Guys, I don't really know what's going on with my hair. This is just what I woke up with, so this is just what happens with my head, so I apologize. Anyway, next one is we'll talk about the actual changes themselves, because this one is really, really freaking weird, okay? So I'm going to go off on a couple of, I think, relatively important tangents. One of them is going to have to do with win rates, and that's going to start with Mauga right here. This is one of the most interesting changes that we've ever had, I think, in the history of Overwatch. And let me explain why. It's not the changes themselves, because I think the changes themselves are relatively whatever. But what it is what it means. Let me clarify. So I think Mauga right now is underperforming. I think that he's overall not a very strong tank right now. I'm honestly fine with that. He's in one of my dirty half dozen, dirty dozen of characters, maybe even the worst 5 of characters that I think should never, ever, ever be meta. Not just because Mauga is a toxic character, but Mauga mirrors are the worst tank mirror in the entire game. And even though he's gotten more healthy in many other aspects of his kit, Cardiac Overdrive, Cage Fight, Berserker, and so on are still relatively toxic. And so basically Cardiac Overdrive no longer provides allies with damage reduction. This isn't going to affect ranked that much, but crucially, and this is why this patch is so important, this affects high-level play a lot, because this is one of the big reasons why Mauga is being played at the high level. It's not the only reason why he's being played at the highest level in pro metas. If you've been paying attention to any OWCS, there's been a lot of Mauga metas, even when the character overall is underperforming, and a lot of that has to do with Cardiac Overdrive. The damage reduction given to allies and the damage reduction and so on. And this is not something that you see really utilized in rank that much. This one doesn't actually nerf his rank performance, but it actually nerfs pro performance. But they didn't stop there. They also, ultimate cost increased, basically ultimate shield decreased, which I think these are all fine. And then Berserker passive, basically the overhealth conversion rate reduced from 50% to 40%, so his overhealth generation has affected as well. And these are all not major nerfs in ranked, but as a whole, this is more than a slap on the wrist, to be sure. Not just in the pro environment, but also in ranked. I mean, this is not nothing. Like, this adds up quickly. And this is already with a character that I suspect is underperforming in ranked and has been for a long time. And rightfully so. But what this does is this brings up 2 very important questions. Number one, why on earth do we not have public stats like Marvel Rivals? It's just unquestionable to me that this is the right play. Anybody that says that bad actors, they'll misconstrue the stats, they're already doing that anyway. The big example that comes to mind is about 6 months ago, I believe Arissa got a micro buff because she was like really maybe not 4 months ago, something like that. She was doing terribly, like literally the worst hero in the game. And she got a basically harmless little micro buff. And people were like, oh no, here it comes, Arissa power creep again, with no context of how badly Arissa was underperforming. Those kind of comments are going to happen anyway. Like, there's just no way to avoid them. So you might as well give what I would hope to be a good actor like myself, somebody that's going to have good faith arguments, the materials that we can not just interpret patch notes, especially ones like these where there is no interpretation at all, And also maybe we can even do some sort of content and projects outside of it, like where I can look at this and learn from this. Or let's look at bronze pick rates. Let's look at grandmaster pick rates. Let's see the difference between the two. Let's kind of theorize why. It's just generally educating the community as a whole. It's information that should be free to the community, and Marvel Rivals has shown why that's the case. I'm not going to go any more deep into that. I'm planning on making maybe an own video on that at some point, because I'm trying to pitch this to the Overwatch team. Hey, this needs to change. I don't know that necessarily that they purposefully choose not to right now. I think that old Blizzard definitely did. Old Overwatch 1 definitely did. I think it may be that they don't have the manpower for it right now, but regardless, development hours, I think, need to be put into this for the long-term health of the game. But that's only the one reason why this frustrates me, because we don't know. Because if Mauga is underperforming, and I highly suspect that he is, then the only reason he was nerfed is because we probably have another Mauga Pro meta. I've been hearing the word on the streets that somehow Palpatine has returned. And again, we could have a long conversation about that as well, about why pros consistently migrate back to Mauga. A large portion of it is just lazy psychology that happens over and over again with the professional players, which sucks. It's frustrating for me to see, because I don't think Mauga is a strong character in a vacuum, but he's a familiar character and has been familiar for a long time for the professional community. Plus the value of push-pull. Again, I'm not going to get into it too much longer. But it's lazy and it's crappy coaching and team play. It's not crappy coaching. People are playing to win. It's just crappy. It's a crappy professional environment, community, whatever. That always leads us back to Mauga. And it's familiar and it's easy, and they're going to keep abusing that. They're like gold players. But that's just how it's always been. It's how it was when I was coaching, and it's always going to be that way. So they clearly don't want a Mauga meta in China. And so they're willing to do whatever it takes to get rid of a Mauga meta in China. And I don't necessarily disagree with that step. I think this is, like, if esports matters at all, even if it doesn't matter more, like, if it matters at all, having another Mauga meta, like the fourth Mauga meta at a LAN again, I mean, that sucks. Like, that would really, really, really suck. And it's interesting because it seems like they actually care about that. Like, I don't know the last time that we've had a patch that was strictly made around a specific hero dominating at the esports level. That's a pretty big deal. Maybe I'm misremembering. I know you could technically argue role queue, but I think role queue was just as much, if not more, about the base game itself and how toxic it was to have 4 DPS every game, as I remember playing in gold at the time, plat at the time. But regardless, this is pretty weird, and it sets a weird precedent, but not necessarily a bad one. I'm just more annoyed because we see stuff like this on a character that's clearly underperforming, and then we see stuff like this. And I know that Roadhog is underperforming, but again, without the information of public stats, I still see way more Roadhog than I do Mauga in my ranked games, and this is what we have. Like, this character is just as toxic as Mauga. Maybe not as toxic in a mirror, but in isolation, I'd rather play versus a Mauga, if my tank isn't playing Mauga, than a Roadhog on any character. Character sucks. He's the worst. Disappointing. And there's another character that's going to make that list, and you can probably guess who. Ultimate cost for Primal Rage Winston, this is totally fair. Zarya energy degeneration rate is, again, pretty fair. I think she's probably overperforming right now. And to be clear, this isn't like some massive buff on Roadhog, but again, it's the spirit that matters for me. Primary Fire fall-off range, this guy is really underperforming. Again, from what I hear, no idea. Overbuff is completely out of date, so I don't even have an educated guess. Secondary Fire, don't care as much, but this is fine. I love this change. This is something that we actually as a community asked for, so I don't know if it was our idea or maybe somebody else's idea that was adjacent to ours, so either way, congratulations, we got what we wanted. It makes sense lore-wise. It gives her survivability, which is what she needs, but it does so without making her 250 HP. So this is a great middle ground. I've played with a couple of Echoes already, and you definitely notice it. It's not a huge change, but it's lore appropriate, and it feels nice, big quality of life, good stuff. I don't fully understand how heavy this will be felt. With the projectile changes in Soldier 76, it's probably needed. The guy is also underperforming. Not really sure. Leave it as it is. And then we're going to get into our second problem with the patch notes, and that is cooldown increases. So let's talk a little bit about cooldown increases. What makes a game fun? So I'm going to go way back here. Gramps is going to get in his rocking chair and tell you about what got me into Overwatch in the first place. Now, this is going to be a little bit dramatic, but it's going to kind of prove a point. I had played a lot of shooters as a kid. At my friend's house, Call of Duty, Search and Destroy, and so on. And I realized pretty darn quick back in 2004, 2005, 2006, that I did not like respawning, or the lack of respawn, rather. I just like team deathmatch. I don't like dying and then you're done. Long periods of downtime within action just didn't interest me. And this is before the whole Gen Z phone brain rot thing. You know, I just like being engaged in what I'm doing. Now, some amount of downtime is fun. You know, I'm not like a Candy Crush addict. You know, but I like feeling like I'm able to make choices fairly often. And so we see a Sojourn nerf, which probably was needed. I think this character was way overperforming. I don't have any stats on that but we have a cooldown increase on Power Slide. Now, this cooldown has been nerfed several times. I want to say it was 5 seconds or 6 seconds on her release. It's gone from 5 to 6 to 7 to 8. And I don't think 8 seconds is a long cooldown. I think 7 to 8 is probably pretty reasonable. We saw 5 to 6, I believe, with Hazard. At a certain point, like a cooldown can be too short because there's basically no downtime with a cooldown available. And I don't think that's that big of a deal with this character. Does it address a lot of the root issues with Rail? No. Will that ever be addressed? I don't know. I've already given my feedback in my the perk fixes video. Skip to the Sojourn section if you're curious, because I talk about some ideas that I had about how to actually fix the Rail power fantasy without making her so reliant off of the Rail, essentially. And I think that if some of those are implemented, then we might be able to allow her, because I think the slide is the most interesting and most fun, and probably the most healthy aspect of Sojourn that makes her unique in comparison to the other snipers. And I don't think this is a completely unnecessary or bad nerf, but I don't think this is a particularly productive one either. It's just kind of, okay, it makes the character a bit worse, but it doesn't really address the elephant in the room, and I don't know if they ever will. So I'm neutral on this, but keep that analogy that I said in mind about longer cooldowns. Widowmaker, base health increased from 200 to 225 HP. Again, she's probably underperforming. She probably needs some sort of help, but it's the same Roadhog example. She sucks. This is a character that is easily up there with old prior to perk Sebastian for being the most toxic DPS to be meta. I cannot think of a single DPS I'd rather have meta less than Widowmaker. And I say that with my wife being a Widowmaker one trick. No offense, but she's the worst. She dominates the lobby. You cannot interact with her whatsoever because of the range that she plays at, and it's very feast or famine. There's not a lot of utility and in-between value with her. She is more hot or cold than any character in the entire game. And that's including Roadhog and Doomfist in that argument, by the way. So, you know, it's whatever. I don't think we're going to have a Widowmaker meta necessarily. Ball is still strong. Sombra is still strong. Tracer is still strong. But, you know, I just wish that we had more stats so I could be like, all right, yeah, fair. Because this is kind of where I'm at right now. It's like without information, I need to be able to tell you guys that this is necessary because she's at a 42% win rate. You get what I'm saying? Or that she's dying first and 96% of fights or something crazy like that. So going back to that analogy here, you can probably see where that was going. On a cooldown on Biotic Grenade and 5v5 specifically, we'll talk about 66 a little bit here, goes from 12 to 14 seconds. I can't do this. Now, you could pull up Overbuff on the, not Overbuff, sorry, the wiki on this. You guys could check this on what the cooldown decrease and increase of Biotic Grenade has looked like over the years. I want to say it was 10, maybe 11, but it is gradually increased higher and higher and higher. And now we have a 14-second cooldown, one of the longest cooldowns in the game. I want to say up there with Cardiac Overdrive, Life Grip, Sleep Dart, coincidentally. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Ana is my favorite character to play. She also is incredibly strong, one of the strongest characters, I think, on paper right now because of her perks. Shrike was broken. When her perks were released, I spent about 10-15 minutes talking about how Ana was broken in a feedback session and things that they needed to do with the perks. And thankfully, we're starting to see that with Shrike, which I think was a really good change, certainly a good start. Reducing the self-nano boost duration by 2 seconds. It matters. But the big thing here is the cooldown increase. This is the least interesting and least healthy that you can nerf a cooldown. Because if you think about what makes Biotic Grenade really strong right now, what makes Biotic Grenade just really strong, period. It's the anti-nade effect, it's the damage, it's the AoE splash, it's the healing. Right now, also with the perk, the bouncing effect can mean that can apply even more, right? Especially when you think about Groggy, the other perk, it's strong, but it's more situational. So a lot of people are picking that bouncing grenade. And they just nerfed it in a completely wrong way, in a way that has more downtime. I think, was it like 16, 1/6 more. So it's like 2 more seconds more. Like that's a huge deal. Yeah, it's 16, about 17% longer. So this is not good for me or for any Ana player or for anybody that plays Ana. You now have longer downtime between cooldown cycles, which means less choice to do about what you do with the cooldown. The best way to balance a cooldown is if it already has a relatively longer cooldown, 10, 12 seconds, is to then nerf its efficacy, nerf its strength of what it can do. So that you're still able to use the cooldown frequently enough, but that it's not an all or nothing choice and then a long period of downtime. We already have that with Sleep Dart. We don't need that with yet another cooldown. Imagine if every cooldown in the game approached this. Imagine if Power Slide went twice as far but was on an 11-second cooldown. Imagine if Helix on Soldier did 160 damage but had an 8 or 9-second cooldown. The character would feel so much less interesting and so much more frustrating to play because keeping a cooldown spike in value still means that there will be instances where you're going to get destroyed diving in Ana because she's going to get a double bounce. However, as the Ana doesn't feel that good because I basically have to wait for that opportunity to present itself or otherwise risk completely wasting the cooldown and never getting it back again. It's punishing in all the wrong ways. It's frustrating and nerfed in all the wrong ways. And it doesn't necessarily deal with all the pain points. It just makes those pain points happen less often, which isn't a good enough nerf. So in a weird way, this nerf isn't good enough and yet is way too harsh. And it's just exact example of how to not nerf an already long cooldown. And I'm being pretty negative about this. I've had a lot of positive things to say about Overwatch recently, so my expectations are a little bit higher. So don't take this as doom and gloom and rage baiting or anything like this. I just strongly feel that this is wrong, and I expect more from the development team, especially given their track record the last several months. So in an isolation, it wouldn't be so bad, but it would. It really would. I really strongly disagree with this. And even though this is not going to kill the game, Ana definitely needed a nerf. If Ana's not as strong for a period of time, it's not the end of the world. For me, as always, if you guys have ever watched any of my patch notes, it's very rarely about the immediate ramifications, which I know is a bit of a tunnel vision way of looking at it. But to me, it's more about the spirit of the change and what it signifies for the future of balance and development. Because I'm not interested in this patch. I'm interested in this concept being something that we revisit with other characters or that we never really learn from. And that's what concerns me. It's the same thing that I'm concerned about, like the win rates and the pick rates and so on. I don't care if Roadhog's underperforming and gets a little buff, right? But I want to know. I want to know what those pick rates and I want to know what those win rates are, right? I want to know these things. And I think that that's kind of like where I'm at right now. By the way, Juno got her ult cost reduced, which I think is also aimed at pro play. But I think that's also pretty fair. So anyway, that's about all I have right now. Pretty, I wouldn't say harmless patch. Pretty interesting patch. Let's put it that way. Nothing that's going to break the game necessarily. But it's one that raises a lot of interesting questions about our balance around pro play, about pick rates, public stats, win rates, and importantly, what is the right way to nerf a cooldown, and what needs to be, like, what can we expect from the Overwatch team moving forward? So enjoy 6v6, enjoy 5v5. There's a lot to look forward to. The Frey playtest, a lot of people were asking me about my thoughts on the Frey playtest. I didn't really have any new thoughts to add that haven't already been said by a lot of other people, so if I don't have anything nice to say, or new to say, I won't say anything. She's fun, she's great, looking forward to playing her. And yeah, that's about all I got. And see you in the next video.